China is selling 194,000 Bitcoin. This is a total shocker. Guys, watch out. China was previously the country with the second most Bitcoin. And now it looks like China has sold almost all of the Bitcoin here. At least, that's what sources from the Cryptocoin CEO indicate. The explosive part is that according to official reports, China hasn't sold any Bitcoin. But looking at the Onchain Data, China has actually sold off almost all of its Bitcoin. And the shocking part is that this indeed happened a while ago. That means there's a threat here too. No price pressure on Bitcoin. It's not as if the coins will be sold anytime soon. No, that already happened in the past. What's really crazy here is the geopolitical significance of everything that's going on, because this changes everything completely. The CEO of Cryptocoin has published some really interesting research here that we're going to take a look at now, that are now also showing that China might now be playing a completely different game in the global Bitcoin race. Here we go. This is completely reshuffling the deck here, because Trump just recently commented on it, that China shouldn't be allowed to outpace the USA, and that the USA needs to establish a strategic Bitcoin reserve, or at least get its act together when it comes to Bitcoin and crypto, before China jumps on the bandwagon. Especially geopolitically, this is where it all ends now. Before China jumps on the bandwagon, especially geopolitically, this is where it all ends now. It's all about the race to see who has the biggest Bitcoin bags. I'm actually still working from home in my Bitcoin cave. Check this out. I was just in the sand. That's why I'm a bit messy here. It's pretty awesome. Here there's this black sand, not the classic white sand you usually see, but here it's always the black sand. I'll also show you the view from my home office in the Bitcoin cave here in El Salvador. So it's pretty bullish, don't be scared. Cave here in El Salvador. So it's pretty bullish, don't be scared. I'm not planning any attack or anything like that. I'm not a terrorist just because I look like this. I was just chilling in the sand. Really awesome. Definitely, when we take a look at the statistics here, from 30th December 2024, with the international Bitcoin holdings, we can see that the USA is definitely at the forefront, with just under 200,000 Bitcoin. Then comes China with 194,000 Bitcoin, then the UK, Ukraine, and so on. Then maybe the circle just keeps going. Overall, countries hold here just under 500,000, or just under 600,000 Bitcoin. But now something really exciting is happening, because this graphic has been shared for a really long time. For a really long time, it was said China had under 200,000 Bitcoin since 2019. But according to the latest Onchain Data and Cryptocoin, we know that this statistic is definitely wrong. The CEO of Cryptocoin says here, the CCP hasn't confirmed any sales. Why people are still over 194K. Talking about Bitcoin, also what the statistics say. But warning here, the on-chain data tells a different story. They sold everything and used mixers in 2019 to distribute the funds through the Bitcoin exchanges. So they would have used mixing services here, and according to the Cryptocoin CEO, everything was sold in 2019. We have to say, there are no official news on this. These are basically the accusations from the Cryptocoin CEO. We'll take a look at that right away, the on-chain data. But I'll tell you right away, I'm not an on-chain expert or anything like that. I can't tell you here if the data here is correct. But feel free to check it out for yourselves and then drop your thoughts in the comments below. What you think about it. I mean, it would definitely fit with China's general stance. China has a very restrictive stance. China has developed CBDC. China is a surveillance state, and the values that China represents, they don't really align with Bitcoin. The values that the US represents, they align very well, fit very well with Bitcoin. And that's why it's no wonder that the US is in favor of Bitcoin, of crypto, and so on. Now it opens up because it just fits with the core values here in the U.S. But the core values here in China are really about surveillance, control, enslavement. Okay, maybe enslavement is a bit of an exaggeration, but we need to take that into account here in the context, because a lot of people have always had the theory. Yes, China. Didn't it also have the Bitcoin mining ban? But in the end, it was really about the state secretly lining its own pockets. But the Chinese population hardly benefits from any of this. Now it actually looks like the state here didn't line its pockets after all. Or there's an even more explosive twist, that Bitcoin is being sold off here. But that China has secretly built up a hidden Bitcoin stack again. A lot of people suspect that too, because the hash rate in China is still so high. Even though there was the Bitcoin mining ban, the hash rate was still very high the whole time. So a lot of people assumed that there was still state-run Bitcoin mining here. And then it went into China's secret wallet. But like I said, that's all. conspiracy theory. There are none. I'm saying there are no clear pieces of evidence. There are no official reports on that. But I mean, China would be stupid to report something like that publicly. I mean, there are always rumors that some nations are already buying Bitcoin. So on. I mean, it would make sense, but you can't really confirm it. The Cryptocoin CEO says here that the seized Bitcoin from the Plus token scam would be mixed and sent to exchanges in 2019. It doesn't make sense to use mixers and multiple exchanges. He didn't sell this. So now the question is, okay, why did they confiscate coins in 2019 during that fraud case? That means China never actually bought Bitcoin. They just had confiscated coins here. And for example, in countries like Germany, the coins would be confiscated. Then they just sold them off somewhere, and then Germany ended up with the 50,000. Sold Bitcoin. But what about here? The Cryptocoin CEO says that in China, the coins aren't just sent to exchanges. Wouldn't just be sold off, but that the coins would actually be sent to mixers here. And when you send coins to mixers, it means you want to anonymize things here. But that also means, in turn, that the sales should be anonymized here. That's at least the accusation from the Cryptocoin CEO, and it would definitely make sense. If you don't want to, that people here notice that the Bitcoin would be sold. Then you run it through the mixer, so you basically make the Bitcoin invisible, like anonymizing it. So on one hand, you throw Bitcoin in. Then a lot of other people also have customers in the mixer of a big pool. Everyone puts some water in. On the other hand, everyone takes some water, gets what they need, and then pulls the water back out. So on one side you pour in your assets, and on the other side you pour out water, mixing everything in the middle like that. You can think of it similarly with a mixer service, just that half a Bitcoin flows in and out. And in the end, you mix a team, get fresh, anonymous Bitcoin, and that's basically what it does. It's only if you want to cover something up here. If you don't really have anything to hide, then you generally don't need a mixer here. At least, that's the story that the Cryptocoin CEO is trying to sell us here. And that kind of makes sense. And when you look at the statistic here, you can see that most of the coins were sold or flowed out around the 2019 area, or basically sent into the mixer, and then from the mixer sent into the exchanges. You can see here that it's still happening until 2023, until 2024. That coins would continue to be sold, but the majority was sold back in 2019. Not all coins are gone. Some small amounts may remain. Large shares are gone, but there might still be some small amounts left. But for sure, the large shares seem to be gone now. I actually think I just saw a wrong statistic here. You can see it better here. And it's really, really interesting here. So what David Bailey is saying here. David Bailey says here that not all Bitcoin is being sold, but a few Bitcoin are being sold. That is, he apparently has here. He definitely knows that Bitcoin is being sold, and he says, but not all Bitcoin is being sold. The 194,000, Bitcoin maybe 100,000. I don't know, 120,000, no idea how much. But now here's the explosive news. He says they have stopped selling Bitcoin. When Donald Trump announced his support for Bitcoin and crypto here. And that's really interesting, now exciting, the geopolitical level to that. So that means China sold Bitcoin here because they just thought, okay, what do we want to do with this stuff? It's just some kind of drug money or something. But we're here. When Donald Trump said, hey, we want to get into Bitcoin too, then the Chinese government basically stopped selling Bitcoin. That could, of course, be a coincidence. But it could also be intentional because they just understood. Okay, maybe we made a mistake here. We have to say that's a statement from David Bailey. And the question is, where did David Bailey get his information from this time? So we don't really know if David Bailey's statement is true, because he must have gotten his information from somewhere. That basically China has stopped selling Bitcoin. I mean, just thinking about it, that would definitely make sense. David Bailey confirms, yes, and just to reiterate, they haven't sold all their Bitcoin. They definitely still have some Bitcoin left. So it seems like they sold a few Bitcoin now. Not all. But now they've stopped selling more Bitcoin in the short term to make sure they don't fall behind the United States of America. Someone also writes in the comments, this is definitely very, very good news for the USA. Because I already told you before, Donald Trump is also opening up to crypto, especially now pretty quickly, or maybe even so drastically with the executive order, because he might be scared that China or other parties might outpace him. On the other hand, then it doesn't really make sense again, because the strategic stockpile should first be allocated or at least considered. Okay, it doesn't help us if we think about it for half a year. Which cryptocurrency and merchant do you deal with using crowns? They're not going to mess with us like that, and so on and so forth. So if Donald Trump really saw an immediate threat here, then he would really act on it right away. So it seems he doesn't see an immediate threat. But he has always stood out in the past. Not just in relation to Bitcoin, but also regarding other issues. That he simply sees China as a competitor. And it's the same with China. China also sees the US as a competitor here. And that's really, really interesting. What's basically happening in the background here. Although we obviously can't get inside the heads of Donald Trump or Xi Jinping. But what does that show us? Is that official statistics and all that are always nice. For example, when you see, okay, the US has 200,000 Bitcoin. China has, I don't know, 100,000 Bitcoin, and another nation has 50,000 or 60,000 Bitcoin. It's always nice and all when you observe that and then have the statistics and so on. But what does that show us here? That maybe all these statistics don't really mean anything. Because if a big nation is planning a Bitcoin strategy, they'd probably do it secretly anyway. That means you might have an official stockpile, but you also have an unofficial stockpile. And it's the same with gold reserves. With gold reserves, you never really know either. No one knows how much gold is in Fort Knox. And it's also tactically smart that no one knows how much gold is in Fort Knox. It's tactically smart that no one knows exactly how much gold China has. It's been talked about for a long time that China has been building up massive gold reserves through proxy banks or shadow banks all this time in recent years. And nobody really knows how much that actually is. And China is also interested in keeping the whole thing secret. And it's the same with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is also a reserve asset. More and more nations are realizing that Bitcoin is a reserve asset. And if Bitcoin is a reserve asset, then you don't want to let people know too soon how much Bitcoin you have, how much gold you have, unless you have so many Bitcoin holdings that you're ready to trigger a Bitcoin FOMO. That means if a nation at some point has accumulated so much Bitcoin that they might say, okay, now I'm satisfied, then it would make sense to announce the Bitcoin holdings. Because then that would trigger a massive Bitcoin FOMO and cause a huge rush for Bitcoin. And that would push the Bitcoin price up, and it would pump up your own Bitcoin bags. And that's basically it, the exciting game theory that we're currently playing out, you see. So I have to honestly say that today was a very, very speculative video, with very, very few facts. But of course, with even more speculation. That was definitely something a bit different today. A video that's meant to make you think. Do official statistics even hold up what you're being told is? Or if they're running around with secret strategies behind the scenes that might not come to light, but are definitely not to be overlooked here. And just to think about the game theory, how this is playing out. Because that's super interesting. If you want to buy Bitcoin, then I'll put a link down below to 21 Bitcoin, how you can easily, simply, and safely buy Bitcoin. Absolutely recommended for beginners, pros, suitable for everyone. See you folks. Shoban. Greetings from the Bitcoin cave. Peace out.